So, does anybody have an internet connection? Can we check this on the broadcast? Hello? Yes. Yeah, it's coming. Okay. Let's go. Just coming. If you go to the Meetup page, right? Okay, fine. Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning. Good to see good number of people coming for the meetup. So we'll do a question after the keynote would happen, because keynote is getting live, and we have a Pune office in Red Hat. Pune office of Red Hat is also organizing a meetup for the same day, at the same time. So we wanted to make sure that at least keynote goes on time, and that the team can both see the same keynote. So without taking much of time, I'll invite Avi to kind of take over the things. And so Avi is the CEO of Shippable, and I think that he can read quickly.
So, the next one, right?
Yes, on. It could be here, so that camera.
Okay.
It could be here.
Yeah.
You make sure that you are on the camera.
Okay. Perfect. Hi guys. My name is Avi Kavale. I'm the founder of Shippable.
You can just move the speaker aside. That's also the feedback.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I think it's better. Okay. So.
Turn it off.
Yeah, I think we don't need this, right? Do we need this?
It has to go there.
Is that better? Yeah, I think this.
Probably because the sound is split down. So because
Okay, what I'll do is I'll stand here. Let's put the laptop on this screen. Is that okay? No, this is going to be bright.
Stop there. Please stop there.
It's good?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we need to need this?
No.
Okay. Perfect. I'm much better. So my name is Avi Kavale. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Shippable. We are a continuous delivery platform built on Docker. We've been working on Docker for 18 months. So if you kind of look at back of Docker, what it was, this was like a handshake deal between myself and Solomon when we were initially talking about. We were building our own container system, they were open sourcing it, and we just said, okay, let's try this out. And 18 months from now, every single person in the world is pretty much trying to get on Docker. Microsoft, Google, Red Hat were one of the first guys who actually did it. Pretty much all the companies are after Docker. So what I really want to talk about today is about how this thing is evolving and why it is so important and why people are crazy about this. And we are still not like where tomorrow morning companies like all over the world who are doing banks and stuff like that are going to adopt it tomorrow morning, but a lot of people are already experimenting. We don't know where things will go in the next 18 months, because if anybody 12 months ago had asked where things will go, they wouldn't have been able to tell that this is where we'll be, right? So why is it so important? The number one thing that's happening is, if you look at software development as a whole, right, the fundamental philosophy with which I started Shippable with my co-founder was it was inefficient. So we were wasting too much time. We were building stuff that was not required. And we spent hours and hours and hours trying to get things that we built in one place to go into another place. And people created DevOps, people created tools, people created a whole bunch of stuff. And everything was all about how do I take something that exists in one place and how do I move it into another place in the most efficient way. And that's all it was, right? So it was on my laptop, then it was on my test machine, then eventually it went to some UAT or pre-production and then to production. Now, what was happening is all of this was completely heterogeneous, or they were all different as you went through. So you hear this infamous thing of it works on my machine problem. So first time I was a developer at Microsoft like 15 years ago, and anybody came and told me that this doesn't work, the first thing I always said was, hey, it worked on my laptop. I don't know why it's not working there. And then you sit through this process, right? So what Docker is doing is completely removing that. So what you can actually do is to take something that's running on your laptop and then take it exactly the same way, put it on the bigger machine, and then again, put it onto another different environment, and it works just fine, right? You could be running on a Google Cloud, you could be running on an Azure Cloud, or you could be running on OpenShift, you could be running on your own laptop on a Vagrant VM. It's the same thing that runs across everything, right? So that is basically what is driving everything. So what it does is, the reason why all these companies are crazy is because, crazy about Docker is because now suddenly what you have is an ability to move people from one cloud to another cloud. And that is where the business starts. So it's not, yes, it's great for developers, it's great for all these folks in terms of it makes our lives very easy. But what really companies like Google and Microsoft and including Red Hat and Amazon, everybody is trying to do is, how do I start moving these around in order for me to get the benefit back to the end customer? So what we will see is in the 12 months, there will be a price war on the cloud. You will start seeing flash sales. So if you move your application to my cloud in the next 1 week, we will give you a 30% discount. You'll start having Diwali sales on cloud. And today, if you do that, you can't do it because it takes you a ton of time to try to take one thing from one place and they call it, there's a business called lift and shift. And all they do is they take stuff from one data center and move it into another data center, right? And that's the $1 billion business. There are two companies who actually are publicly traded companies who do this, right? So this is where the opportunity is. So if you think about the next future of what it is there's another kind of container that's coming from the mobile side. There are like, I think it's AirWatch and a couple of other companies are trying to do this, where your application runs in a container on a mobile phone and there's a server-side container. So technically everything will become containers and your host hardware operating system becomes irrelevant. So that is the opportunity. Does it make sense? Or am I going too fast? Okay, so basically what we are saying is, if you kind of just jump into that bandwagon, saying that, look, if I can take applications, I can move things around, and I can kind of make it 10 copies, 1 copy, and all that stuff in a matter of few milliseconds, then everything that I do today, the way I develop applications have to change. And that is what we saw back in 18 months, saying that we don't care whether this is going to work or not. Let's just look at it as, if it does work, what happens? And if that is a big enough world that we want to go play in, let's go make that bet and see what happens, right? So it's kind of like, I wasn't trying to play safe. What I was trying to say is, if the whole world is going to go in this direction in, let's say, 3 years, and that means every single development workshop in the world has to change, and the whole tooling has to change, then let's go build that tooling today and survive for 3 years. And then see what happens. And hopefully we will be there at the right time and everything will develop and all the ecosystem happens. So what happened was, I was thinking 36 months, it happened in 12 months. And that is why it is so crazy. And if you look at some of the slides of Docker, what exactly is happening is, there were like 5 companies working on Docker back in November 2013. In June 2014, when DockerCon happened, there were like 275 companies or something like that partnering with Docker. Now I think it's about 1,000. So kind of what I am really kind of saying is to everyone is like, it's great that you guys are all kind of trying to get to the edge of where the world is kind of going. It's fantastic. But I want to close out with only one thing, and I'll give you a little bit of time to ask me any questions, is we are one of the luckiest generations that have ever lived on this planet, right? If you think about it, things that changed the world happened once in 40 years. And if you kind of look backwards, things that changed the world happened once in 1,000 years. Like wheel was invented, and then metal was invented, and there's this whole Iron Age, Stone Age, and you can kind of look at it in like 1,000 year blocks of how humans developed, right? And even if you look at 1900s, The 1910s were all about penicillin and stuff like that, and things were changing. And then the Industrial Revolution happened, and then the semiconductor revolution happened. So if you look at it, it still was about 20, 30-year blocks, right? And most of the times, it's the total amount of work that you ever do in your life is maybe like 25, 30 years of your life, right? In the last 10 years, there has been 3 massively changed technologies that have come out. Mobile, cloud, and now what we're talking about is completely the way technology got developed. So if you think about it, there are only very few generations in this world which have actually gone and seen 3 different massively changing technology landscapes occur while they were still trying to figure out what they were trying to do. So what I think is this is a fascinating part of life. So everything that you know yesterday is going to be useless day after tomorrow. So it's great to see folks like trying to kind of get on with that edge. And it's not being like, hey, you're all slow or anything like that. It's more of like saying it's an opportunity to go after something massively crazy. So I don't know if anybody saw like the person who started 500 startups was in Bangalore just a week ago. I got a tweet. His name is Dave McClure, if you want to look at it. And he was like saying the craziest place of innovation is not in California, it's going to be in Bangalore. And it's because there's a huge amount of talent. The startup costs and bootstrapping costs are much lower. And that means people don't need to take the risks that people take in US in order to actually go create a startup. Like in US, you have to take like an 80%, 90% pay cut before you actually say go create a startup. Whereas in India, you don't need to take 90% pay cut. You can probably live with like 30% pay cut and you can actually go after a startup and say, I'm going to create something and try to see what happens in 18 months. And if it doesn't work, you still have a job always. You can always go back and do it. So I think there's this huge thing that will happen in Bangalore. So it's kind of like fascinating. And especially from being from Bangalore, like back, I went to RBC here, and so it's fascinating to see that Bangalore is doing that. So that's pretty much all I had. Any questions? I'd be more than happy to take. Anything? Anything you want to know about what's happening?
So what's the trade-off with this abstraction, Docker? I mean, container technology is not new, right? DSDJ and then LXC. I mean, why so much buzz around Docker?
See, Docker is not a container, right? They are using underlying container system that existed in Linux from day one. What they just made it is mere mortals like myself can use it. That's all. Before it was like folks like Devashish who's in my team, only those guys could actually work. They are actually in the kernel, they're looking at something. Whereas for any technology to get adopted in a very widespread way, you have to make it much more easy for people to use them. And that's what Docker did. So the whole networking stack and how things actually work. Like Cloud Foundry is another one where they're trying to do something on top of LXC, but it was still very heavy lifting. What Docker did is made it so easy that I can just say Docker run. Like for example, the easiest way to explain to what it is why is GitHub so popular when they actually didn't write the Git technology at all? Why is that? I mean, Git actually can be done without GitHub. But still GitHub is massive because all they did is they made it super easy, they made it super social, and they got a whole bunch of people to collaborate with each other. And that's what Docker is trying to do. The containers were all there, but what they're now trying to say is, hey, I'll have this hub and where everybody can use the same container that this person built and I can use it. And they made it super easy to manage all that stuff. And that's all it is. And most ideas in this world are not very difficult ideas. You don't need to go and invent or discover penicillin. You can do a lot easier things, and it just makes life, if you make somebody's life much easier, then there's a chance that you'll actually have a company that you can sell.
And what are the security concerns using Docker?
So I get this question all the time. Like we talk to a lot of analysts, Gartner, Forrester, all these guys. Okay. So the question was, are there any concerns about security and isolation in Docker containers? I think that was the question, right? So it's the same question I get asked by a lot of analysts, a ton of Forrester, Gartner, you name it, they ask the same question. So my response to it is always the same. If I go pull up that same analyst paper that they wrote in 2002 and say, talk about VMs and replace the word VM with container and replace the word physical machine with a VM, you can republish that paper today. And it's every single concern that they bring up is exactly the same concern they brought up about, hey, how does VM actually, is there problems of security? Now I have physical machine boundaries. Now you're saying multiple applications are sitting on the same particular VM and everything. The other way to answer that question is basically like, even if you look at 9/11 as an issue in US and they locked down all the airports and everything, they allowed you to print your own boarding pass and go to the airport. I mean, it was done on A4 paper that I could print at home. They had all this security, but the reason why I'm saying that is the economics will actually drive the innovation. So even though you can say it might be a little bit worried about security and everything, if I'm within an enterprise, I'm much more okay because my firewall is protecting me everything. I don't need to worry about the next door guy who wrote an application hacking my application because we are in a trusted zone. So it's going to get evolved there, and eventually it'll start moving towards a point where, hey, even the cloud is hardened, everything is okay. Now, nobody even worries about spinning up an AWS VM and saying, I'll deploy my app there. But 10 years ago, they basically said it's never going to happen. The same thing happened in '98 with credit cards. People said nobody's going to give credit cards on the internet. If you kind of think about it now, people are trying to save their credit cards on the internet so that I don't need to give it again. So it's just the process of how you go about it. And there are some valid concerns. And as long as you harden those things, you're pretty much okay.
So you're saying basically Docker has some security concern, and at the same time, most of the analysts, what they're talking about is just the buzzword, and they're just trying to just write about it. Okay. Some story around Docker, is it?
So is Docker hyped, is the question, right?
No, the question is about the security.
So does Docker have any security vulnerabilities?
Yeah.
And Windows, after 40 years of being there, has still vulnerabilities, right? So the whole point is this is a cat and mouse game, right? Right? I mean, it's not even just Windows. I won't pick on Windows. I'm from Microsoft, so I'm allowed to pick on Windows. But you can pick, I mean, there are still Linux hacks, there are still Linux exploits. It's all about if you kind of go and say, I'm going to expose certain things and I'm going to give you root access and all that stuff, or I install Windows using next, and say I'm done with Windows installation. Yes, you are going to expose yourself to a lot of vulnerabilities. The same thing with Docker. So if you kind of be stupid and say, I'm going to run the container in privileged mode and not really secure certain sys processes and I'm going to let you do stuff, yes, they will attack you. But on the other hand, the way you have to think about it is, are there known knowns that I can actually control? The worry I will have is the unknown unknowns, which I don't even know what I need to do and somehow I get hacked.
So do you think a startup coming up with security around Docker has good chances? Just asking.
Oh, the question is there an opportunity for a startup to work on security? Is that what the opportunity? There are opportunities. The way I would say it is everything that has been ever known to mankind or humankind in the last 30 years of technology is going to get all disrupted with how the application is going to get developed. So there's opportunity in everything. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. There's a company called Cluster HQ. How many people have looked at this company? Anybody? So this is the latest company that came out on the Docker ecosystem. What they are doing is, if you think about RAID, right? How many people understand RAID? Like storage and RAID and all that stuff, right? So what you did in RAID was you took, like, let's say a 1 terabyte disk and you created maybe 3 of them or 4 of them and made copies of it, and then there was a controller on top of it and that allowed you to give you redundancy. If you kind of take a step back and say that disk is a virtual entity and that's a container. So what they are doing is they're building storage systems which are all just containers. And what I'm talking about is file allocation table being done using containers, using a MongoDB database that allows me to map that entire container system on where my data is actually there. So what we are talking about is innovation at that level where storage itself is getting changed. Now that means storage virtualization is big. Like S3, the way it looks will change completely based on if Cluster HQ actually survives. So what I'm saying is, don't think of it as, is there an opportunity? I would look at it as like saying, is this a problem that's worth solving? And if you think that that's a problem that's worth solving, I can guarantee that there's a business somehow around it. So, any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like generally you have like your physical hardware, on top of that you like virtualize it and or maybe run a VM, and then you're saying that on that you run containers. Is that?
I'm not saying anything. All I'm saying is, or the question is the template architecture for Docker container is you have a physical machine on which you have a hypervisor, and then which creates a VM on which containers actually run. I might end up causing a lot of people a lot of pain by saying this. If you think about it, Docker is not complementary with VMs. You want to, there are companies who have businesses on VMs will tell you that it is complementary because it's about protection, right? I mean, I have to somehow make sure I'm relevant. There is no reason for you to have a VM if you want to use Docker. So if you look at a company called CoreOS, their whole business model is about that. So what they are going to try to say is virtualization is a way of giving you density on a machine, right? You're going to create multiple densities. Containers is a way to give you density on machines. So if containers are giving you a higher density than virtualization or VMs, then why am I virtualizing and then containerizing? So that's the engineer's way of thinking about it.
That's my question.
Yeah.
What you just said, should I use, so do I use a VM or do I use Docker to build it?
You don't need to. What I'm saying is you don't need to use VMs. There's nothing that VM is buying you that you need to run on top of Docker.
Yeah, but if you look at the vagrant model,
yeah,
especially for Windows and Mac, you will have it live like environment product by vagrant.
So the question was, but Vagrant is doing exactly that. Is the question. So
for non-Linux platform.
So that's the inefficiency of those platforms. So the way I will position it is, it's the limitation of that platform. It's what that platform is not able to do. So it's a matter of time. All of these platforms will evolve. And they will all basically get to a point where I don't care what your metal operating system is. I call it the MOC, or the metal operating center. I don't care what that is. As long as I can get the kernel access to it, I can run containers on top of it. Whether it could be iOS. Like iOS is running, I think it's, I don't know what version of is it GNU or something? Yeah, FreeBSD. Yeah. So it's running the kernel underlying it. So you can technically containerize iOS very easily. Windows is a different beast. So you can pretty much run Cygwin or something like that and try to do something around it. Yeah. Boot to Docker and CoreOS are very similar. Boot to Docker and Vagrant are very similar. What Boot to Docker is doing is giving you a virtual environment inside a Mac where you can just spin up containers. So I just think that the way you think about it, don't get tied up into who is doing what. Get tied up into what is the reference architecture that would, forget about operating system, forget about what it is. Just look at like saying, if this is the reference architecture with just blocks, does it make sense for me to have a VM here or not?
Just going back to the basics. In the very beginning, you said that Docker will help you take your applications from one cloud to another. How is that part?
So the easiest way to, the question is, how does Docker help you do portability, right? So the easiest way to answer is, how many people have done Java programming here? A lot of people, I'm assuming, right? Do you understand jars? What a jar was?
Yeah.
So what a jar was basically Sun's attempt to kind of say, I don't care about the operating system, right? What they were trying to say is, I just need a JVM that runs on any operating system. So I build a JVM that runs on Windows, I build a JVM that runs on whatever version of Linux or Unix, whatever it is. And then I will run an application as a jar inside that JVM, and now my application will run just the way it needs to run. Now, if you take what Docker is, make it go into steroids with it, with the operating system and everything packaged into that. So the jar has gotten upgraded into a container. And now what I can do is, I don't care about the operating system on which the container is going to get hosted, as long as I have the underlying JVM equivalent, which Docker base image file.
So basically what you're saying is that Docker contains the operating system, the application, the database, if there is anything else in one single container.
So Docker contains the references to all of that stuff. So if you kind of say the operating system is vanilla, and I want to, if you kind of look at operating system files, let's say there are 1,000 files in an operating system, right? The chances that an application will go make change is maybe 10 files of those, like 1% of those files will actually get changed by the application. The rest of it is all new files that the application has, right? So if 99% of the files are not changing, why am I putting all those 99% of the files into the container? I'm going to keep it outside. I will have the same vanilla base image of, let's say, Ubuntu or whatever, or RHEL, for example, running on all these machines. And then I can just move the containers, which has the delta of it, anywhere I want. And now when the container comes up, it will do a union of those two systems, and it will give you the net result of what that VM or that application requires.
So once again, I understand the whole process. Now let's say you're going to, in the AWS or Azure, there's a VM, IaaS stack, there's a VM. Right? So what would basically I do in the first place when I'm developing the application? Do I need to take care of Docker at that point in time, or
No.
when I'm deploying?
No, Docker is basically, it is one-on-one. I think I'm running out of time, but we can take it offline. So I can explain to you what exactly is going on. So, anyhow,
I'm already new to this.
that's fair enough.
Maybe can you quickly spend 1 minute to talk about networking maturity in the Docker?
So the question is, how is networking evolving in Docker? It's a very, very hot space. So there are a lot of companies that are creating a lot of ideas around this whole networking. There are companies that are coming out which are policy-based networking, as opposed to trying to design whether this application can talk to, or this server can talk to this server, which is what networking typically has been. It's more of like, can this user connect to this server through this application? Does he have or she have the policy to connect? So you're kind of taking, instead of creating security, which is kind of set in stone about machine-to-machine network, what they're trying to do is they're trying to package that along with the traffic. So the traffic itself is coming with policies to say, can this machine with my credentials talk to that server? As opposed to this server can talk to the server. So there's a lot of innovation happening there. And there is a lot of limitations with Docker in terms of network, but I think it's getting better. So they have added a whole bunch of multiplexing on top of the existing network. And this is another reason why you don't want VMs. Because VMs will actually create a multiplexing layer, and on top of it, you're creating another multiplexing layer. So you want to kind of get as close to the metal as possible. Makes sense?
Any companies in this space?
There are a couple of them. Union Bay Networks is one. I haven't heard of that company, but Union Bay is Seattle. That's why I know them. And there are a whole bunch of guys. I'm pretty sure Cisco and all these guys are doing something internally. But I don't know what they're doing. So. Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I think we just stop the broadcast of this session so that we can.